Welcome to Swarm with Us. It's a series of roundtable discussions between top tier talent as they discuss tools, processes, and rituals that enable them to perform at their best. So, for today's episode, we'll be talking to three kick-ass product managers to find out just makes it, what exactly makes them the best at what they do. So, today's episode is co-hosted by Product PH, a professional community aiming to provide an open space for people interested in building great products to connect with each other and one of the biggest product communities in the Philippines. So, in the chat, please introduce yourself, share who you're with, what company you're from, and what your roles are. And I will introduce our speakers. So, first off, we have Mika Reyes. Mika is a certified hustler, having co-founded her own stealth startup and Cognity Labs while sharing honest founder and life stories over at her YouTube channel and newsletter. Previously, she has worked as a PM for LinkedIn, Kumu, and Ripcord. So, what makes Mika a badass founder? She says, "My awesome teammates make me a badass founder." Let's go. Go, Mika. And our next guest is Gian Villaluz. He's a digital product manager at Home Credit Philippines. And having been a nurse by education, he used to work with a lot of patients. Now he works with a lot of patients. And fun fact, he was my product manager at the enterprise squad back at Caliber. So, what makes Gian a badass manager? He says, "I'm a very ordinary person. I don't know enough about technology as I would like, which means I don't know what the rules are. So I'll try anything and think that anything can be done. And most of the time, it works out." Yes, hopefully all of us feels that way. And our last speaker is Kaith Lopez. So Kaith is a product owner at PTEnhance, a B2B software CMS for fitness coaches, professionals, and businesses. He was a PM and UX designer at VPeso, as well as an applications developer at IBM for projects like Project Noah Wise and Smarter Agriculture. What makes Kate a badass manager? So he says, "I always tell my team I don't care so much about any drama. Just bring out to me what's the problem and discuss, and that saves me time. It's also fun to say no to stakeholders, developers especially, if what they're saying is not related to our goals." Okay, saying no. Very good. Great. Number one PM skill. Okay, thank you everyone, and welcome to Swarm with Us.
Hello. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Yes. So let's start off with your early career and your story of becoming a PM. So what's your story of becoming a PM and what was the journey like? Mika, maybe we can start with you.
Okay, it's kind of a long journey. Okay, so I'm gonna start way back when. I was actually one of the early team at MedGrocer. If you guys are familiar with that, so health startup in the Philippines, and serendipitously landed there. Didn't know I even wanted to get into tech. This was my second year of college, but ended up doing a lot of what you might say product management roles. So wearing many different hats, very small teams, very like 3 or 4 people there, just doing everything to make the business run and make the business go. And then eventually said after MedGrocer, okay, I want to be in tech, but what do I do within tech? And at that time, right, product management is still a very nebulous role. So I didn't even say like I want to be a product manager because I didn't know what it was, but had some roots in design. So I said, okay, I want to be in tech. Let's try design out. So the next year, as an intern, I was a product design intern at this robotic ed tech startup in the Bay Area in Silicon Valley. Um, so as I was learning more about design, I then heard more about this product manager role from other designers, meeting other people who were interns in the Bay Area, and then cold emailed a lot of product managers and other folks, and was like, "What do you do? What's a product manager?" And learn more about it, and increasingly said, "Whoa, this is cool! Like, eventually, I do want to be a founder myself, and I think this is going to be the best foundation for me as I start off my career, knowing that goal, and also kind of amalgamation of all the different interests I had, where design was interesting. I really enjoyed it, but I also was very interested in the business side of things. And then I was also very interested in the engineering side of things, and uh, didn't know what to focus on, and also could not focus. So I was like, okay, product management does all of that. So the next year, as that was me graduating now. So I was looking for roles in product management and in consulting, just like very generalist roles, as you would after when you graduate. I was lucky to be a part of the Kleiner Perkins Fellowship. So Kleiner Perkins is a venture capital firm in the Bay Area, and they have this fellowship where they pair engineers, designers, and product managers early in their career, interns or like new grads, to their portfolio companies. So they get like early talent and put them in the portfolio companies. So I joined Ripcord, so robotics digitization, some more B2B PM. It was my first official foray into product management. I was there for about a year, and then I was very drawn to consumer rather than B2B. I think that was where I was like, I don't want to be a B2B product manager. I want to be in consumer. So
Why not? Why not?
slower cycles. I think like I never say never. Maybe in the future I will. But consumer is just a bit faster, more fast paced. You kind of get closer to your users. So was very interested in exploring that. I ended up working with Kumu. So I was on the early team at Kumu when they were still figuring out exactly what they were. So the pitch earlier was we're going to be the super app of the Philippines, and maybe that's still the mission or the vision. But it started off as like, we're going to be a messaging app because there are all these messaging apps, and we need to be a messaging app for the Philippines. That didn't necessarily work out. But joined Kumu as an early PM and helped them set up their user research and data stuff. So a lot of it was just based on intuition of the founders and vision of the founders. And I was like, yo, we need to talk to customers and users. And so help them pivot into the more live streaming thing that today. And they still credit me for helping them find semblance of product market fit. And then eventually the team moved to the Philippines. I was still working on some visa situations in the US. So decided to stay in the US, and then found a role at LinkedIn. So that's also still consumer, helping hiring managers find the right candidates for the role. And have since left LinkedIn for to found my own startup.
All right. I'm sure we're gonna get into the thick of your stealth startup soon. How about you, Kate? I think your journey is a bit similar to Mika in the sense that you're interested in the amalgam of all of these things, engineering, design, and even
Right.
analytics. Go ahead.
Sure. To give you a little bit of context, right now I'm a PM for fitness coaches, software management. So for them, my journey is all about not typical because I came from a user experience design role, and then became a PM. But before that, for the UX design, my foundation is really on developer. So I'm a 3 to 4 years development experience. So from developer to UX design to PM. So that's my shortcut or summary of my role. So uh, I- um, going from I think from developer role, I think it came out of my frustrations. That's why I became a UX designer because um, it's like you felt something that when you're a developer, and then something I felt I really felt I'm not contributing anymore to the company. So, and then I felt that the UX design role is more fit on my skills and my interests as well. So that time, but on our project, there's no this UX design role in the company. So that was IBM Philippines. So I came from IBM Philippines, and then there's a lot of projects, but you cannot choose a project alone because you have to you are assigned there since it's a corporate, and you are assigned to a certain project, and then until then um I asked a mentor from my colleague, and then she recommended a mentor from the US, IBM US. And then I asked, "Hey, I want to become a UX designer. How can I become a UX designer?" And then she listed down, and then I listed down all the tips. And so one thing she mentioned is that I remember is that um, find projects within IBM, even a side project can do, like you volunteer or having a design role. And then if not, if no opportunity, then go outside, maybe a part-time design role or design task. And then eventually I have an opportunity to look outside the organization na. So that's I came to VPESO doing it's a mobile rewards application. So I applied here as a UX designer, and then 6 months passed. I am promoted to product manager. So becoming a product manager has it's not accidental, but it's intentional. So because I really wanted to do PM role, and little did I know I am doing the PM role or task na pala why I'm doing design, because it was really I'm leading the direction and design direction of the company, and then I'm making decisions that I am not seeking approval of the boss already, and it's like I'm already the gatekeeper from the stakeholders and both the developers, and making the right decisions at the company. I think the thing that I like about becoming a PM is that look for I think looking for the valuable um, be bringing a value to the company, and then like because I'm also interested on the business side na, so making sure that we have the right customer and that it is the product market fit. So that's the summary of me making one beacon.
Got it. Actually, my bias is that, or like my perspective is that people who both have like a design and like developer background and to make like really good PMs, right? But then let's move on to someone who's completely different. Gian. Yeah.
So Alex set up that build that, oh, I really like people who were designers and developers because they're great. And here's GM who has done none of that. Yeah. But yeah, that's true. Alex got it, nailed it right on the head. I don't have any experience. I never had any experience with design. I never had experience with developing or coding. And Alex has witnessed some of the designs I've sent over, like wireframes, and they're horrendous. But I try. What's interesting is though is that's one of the reasons why I wanted to do product management. So I started my career education wise is with nursing because I wanted to be in the hospital, at some point be a doctor because I watched ER, maybe a little bit of Grey's Anatomy, and I thought it was cool. Maybe that's why I'm still obsessed with the color white with my shirt. Um, but when I was actually doing it, I didn't really feel like that was the role for me. Um, but my first job wasn't even in tech. It was with the call center. So I've worked with a lot of customers over time. Like it's always been B2C to me. I've only known direct customer feedback. I know the joys, I know the hate. And when a startup from Australia said they wanted to set up shop in the Philippines, I was like, yeah, I want to be part of that. I want to do any role that's there as long as I can do something else aside from working with customers because I've been doing it for 7 years. They said, okay, join us for tech. And they made me set up customer success, and I had to work with even more customers. And a lot of that job was really focused on, again, speaking with the customers, understanding what their pain points were, and that continued for 2 to 3 years. Over that course, though, I got to wear several hats, but nothing really directly with technology. It's only when I joined Caliber, as with their customer success team as well, working with customers. And a lot of what we did was really delivering what these customers were saying to the product team so that they could make sense out of it and probably turn it to something that could be a feature or a product improvement. And with these interactions, I thought to myself, you know what? If I'm going to take these feedback anyway and really work with the product team and find out what we can do with them in terms of features, I mean, why don't I just do that myself? And it was very fortuitous that Caliber at that time was looking to grow their product management team. So I signed up right away. Um, but one of those key motivators, aside from bringing customer feedback, is that I always saw product managers on the whiteboard. They like to draw things, squiggly lines and the squares and the rectangles connecting to this. And I thought that was really sciency and cool, that they would make sense of scribbles on the wall and turn it into technology. And I thought that was great. And really, that was one of the motivators for me, aside from the fact that, developers had really new jokes that I've never heard about and they like memes. So that was a really big motivator for me. So aside from finding solutions, I like drawing on things. But Alex can tell you that, design is not one of my, I want to say I have can't even help it. I have to say I might develop some skill for it, but not anytime soon. But that's been my journey so far.
Okay. Thanks for sharing, everyone. I think now I want to ask you, now that you've shared what happened in your journey, what what's being a PM like at your current role now? So Gian, why don't you start again?
Oh, yeah, sure. So I'm with Home Credit now, which is just really, really big company, like really big. And I came from Caliber. We had like 125 people at any given time. So I'm really used to the fact that I would know everybody, or at least to a second degree. I would have worked with them. I've met them. I've had lunch with them. And now that I'm working with Home Credit, there are about 10,000 people, which is just insane. Which is just insane. Um, and I think the biggest difference is that the accessibility of resources is uh, vastly incomparable. So with Caliber, um, you had a lot of teams doing a lot of things all at the same time. You'd have a lot of overlap, and it really created this ecosystem that collaboration was at the forefront of everything. Workshop was a must have because you can just grab someone and get into a meeting and find really fresh, great ideas and solutions. And I thought that was great. So, like moving over to Home Credit has been really different for me because now you have to set up 3 different meetings just to get into one meeting because there's so many people now, right? There's so many teams, there's so many processes, and I've never been a fan of that before. But now, watching things at scale, it's starting to make sense for me because if you let someone uh, with access to a lot of resources just go and do their own thing, it just turns into chaos. I miss the days when you can collaborate and know everyone. But really, now that I'm working with a different team, I wouldn't say I like it better, but it's different. Like things change, and getting access to different aspects and working with different teams, having a lot of structure, um, is just a different aspect, and it's really helped to broaden how I think about solutions now. It's not just, oh, Alex, we have a vision and we want to convince 95% of everyone here to do this because it's a great idea. um, well, that was great. But yeah, that's how things are different now. Just like it's a really big space. It's exciting, but it's different. So
How about you, Mika? What's it like doing a stealth startup? And now you're a co-founder with, PM roles and plus other roles in there.
Yeah. Well, we don't have PMs right now. It's me and my co-founder. I can tell you that I guess a lot of um, what a PM is described as the mini CEO of their company, and so I guess I'm in that position right now where I'm like literally the CEO. Um, Rather chaotic still. I want to say in exploration phase, hopefully moving soon to execution phase, but um, it's a lot of vision crafting and making sure that we de-risk all the possible ways that like our company might fail in the earliest stages of uh, being a founder, and rife with a lot of pivots. I've maybe pivoted at least 5 or 6 times in figuring out what the company, and actually somewhat in the middle of a pivot, sort of. Um, but yeah, it's exciting. It's fun. I'll maybe also talk about how being a PM was like at LinkedIn,
Go ahead.
where it was similar to maybe comparison of big companies and small company, right? Um, Plus sides of being a PM at LinkedIn, as mentioned, like lots of resources. So we have, well, basically when I first started at LinkedIn, coming from Kumu, was the parts of me that was a PM at Kumu, where I was like part designer, part project manager, sometimes even coded. Those are all abstracted away from me into different people into LinkedIn. So that's how I'll describe it, is like there's always a resource for a specific function. So I worked with a product marketing manager. I worked with biz ops, like a strategy person. I worked with my own designer and their design manager. So lots of different entities that I was able to work with and collaborate with, as well as a lot of other PMs. So other like plus side was that there are other PMs that I could lean onto and like just be a sponge and observe. Oh, this is how this PM writes specs, or this is how this PM like speaks in meetings, or this is how this PM like does their productivity work, which is really nice to learn. And like I pick and choose which ones I can then use as frameworks or whatever for myself. And that's also what I was looking for from like small company to big company, was a community of other PMs that I could just like learn from, and be a sponge around. And another plus is like data. Data is great in a big company. So many things to explore, even just for fun. And so I'd like sometimes just do SQL queries about, not about work, just like I'm curious about the world, kind of thing. Now it's like how do you make sense of the data is like the challenge as PM. But it was great, and also like somewhat of a breath of fresh air in that I was actually able to use quantifiable data and trends to help make decisions, rather than a small company. It's like very few data points, right? I think the flip side of being a PM in a really large company is that it's very slow. And that's also like now comparing startup and big corporation, my preference is I talk about this in one of my videos, but like autonomy versus impact, right? Where I thrive in autonomy, and being in a bigger company requires a lot of just like consensus building, a lot of politics, to be honest, a lot of um, getting people to, even if you have resources, you have to like make a case for those resources, or make a case for more resources for your project, which I wasn't naturally necessarily good at and had to learn over time. But also at the point that I learned it, I was like, "Ugh, do I really want to do all of this? I just want to build a product, y'all." It just takes a lot of time. So, and I'll describe um, changing a page, which was literally like a copy change and a button change, took like 2 to 3 months, and then the startup's like in a day, right? Um, and that's because you have to talk to legal, make sure that all of the copy that you put in this, it was a checkout page for me, all the copy that you put in this very like important page is like to the T. You have to talk to product marketing, because they're the ones who like know what the customers and what the users are thinking about, blah blah blah. You have to talk to the engineer who's gonna do it, and like ask for resources for this engineer. So there's a lot of like doing a lot of that stuff, which I at this point in my career or life wasn't or didn't necessarily want to learn in that way. A lot of skills to build too, though, for sure. Like communication, writing really good emails, talking to executives, which are, yeah, again, really, really good skills. Just not the things that I wanted to learn at that time. So that's also why I moved on. And yeah, I think those are the main things. I guess other like more personal things are um, it felt more alone. Interestingly, there's a lot more people in the company, but um, it's feels kind of less collaborative, because um, I'm kind of sometimes competing for, like my biz ops person, for example, is not just working for my project, they're working for like 3 other PMs projects, as one example. And like that's kind of the same for other folks. It changes so often. You have resources here, you have resources there, that other project. And so it feels alone, because sometimes you're the one advocating for the thing that you have the strongest conviction for, um, but also competing for resources in that way. So while there are so many people, sometimes feels lonely as a PM in a big company, interestingly.
Even if it's big. Oh my. Thanks for sharing that tumultuous journey, Mika. You guys should check out her YouTube channel, and she has a specific video specifically talking about having no network, being a woman in a male dominated industry, an international student that required visa sponsorship, being a non CS degree holder, and all that jazz. But maybe Mika, you can talk about that later too. So, Kate, how about you? What's it like being a PM slash product owner now at your stage of company?
So in summary, the industry is really interesting because it's a fitness industry, um, a challenging industry right now in the pandemic because they have been affected for over a year now because they some of the business owners have closed the gyms, have closed their studios, and the challenge is really converting them from the physical to the digital and making their business run online. So I like the challenge and I like also the industry because I have to know also the get the business in and out, like what's what it feels like working with the coaches and their clients. So I have signed up, for example, I have signed up in a gym here in the Philippines to test how the coach really works and how do they train their clients so that I get to know the field and their work and the business around them. So like for example, how do they assess their clients before having a gym, and then how do they conduct their workouts or how do they train their clients. So uh, that's the summary of it because you have to immerse yourself on the industry So even if you like uh working out to the gym, so that also gives me the excuse to work out sometimes during the work days. Or so for example, Monday, okay, I have to work out for maybe a couple of hours, but at the same time I'm in studying the industry and the how the trainers will work. So and then but to give you a little bit of context for audience as well. So if you search for a product management role, you can see that there are three circles like technology, design, and business. So that's the reality. Sometimes you have to juggle between the technology side of things, so that's the developers, and then the business side, and then sometimes the design. So you have like in a typical day, imagine that you have to talk to this type of people, developers, designers, and then the business. Sometimes 1 day or 1 week is not enough to really align everyone and give them a sense of like direction. So that's why we have come up the deliverables sometimes are the roadmaps, and then the communication channels are making sure that really are really up. So as a product owner, actually, though this is sometimes the confusion between the product owner and product management. Sometimes in the product PH community, that's one of the common questions. So product owner right now in my in the uh, in the company that I am working with, it is more on the internal side. So it's like a project management mix of a product manager. So more on the internal side of things, like making sure that we execute and deliver the software. Because when you say PM, sometimes you have to more on the business or collaborating more with the customer. So for my side, my role as a product owner is really acting as a scrum master as well. So those are the key roles that I am managing right now. So I make a mix of project management and scrum master. So on a on a on a daily basis. So and then making sure that we execute and deliver what is the requirement. So I think the unique thing about being a product owner is that um, you are just one person instead of like having a two or three like a different person talking to the stakeholder. Because right now I'm directly reporting to the founder or to the CEO, so there's no in between of ours. So the direction of the company and the strategy is also directed towards me, and that's I translate it to the developers. So um, that's my current role.
Then you better get to working out again.
Yeah.
Sorry. Thanks for sharing, Keith. Now my question for everyone is, how do you get the job done as a product manager, right? Because I think it's one of the most difficult jobs in tech. Like perhaps to make it a bit clear, like what kind of frameworks are important for you, any productivity hacks, frameworks to use, mindsets that are important in being a PM. Kate, why don't you go again?
Sure. What are the frameworks? Currently, I am implementing because of course, there's Agile and then Scrum Master. Right now, we are implementing 6 week cycle from, I think that was from Basecamp. So I learned about the 6 week cycle like a few weeks ago, and then compared to having every 2 weeks demonstration or a demo sprint review. Um, a 6 week cycle is more on the like scoping in and scoping out, more of like delivering what is valuable or what is good piece of a product you should deliver in 6 weeks. So basically, that's the framework I'm following right now within the team. So it's a mix of sprint, but more on the um, more longer, but not that too long and not that too short. So it's like a mix of both. So uh, currently, so far we have how many cycles that we have? I think 3 cycles. So I think and seeing by the sound of like the review from the stakeholders, seems like we get the touch of that. Because I think the good thing about the 6 week cycle, if you for the audience perspective, is that we have a 6 weeks development cycle, but we have a time off for 2 weeks. So we will not develop for 2 weeks, or it's just like a time off, and that is allocated for testing or maybe your own project, just to get off the project. Because sometimes in agile or like this 2 week sprint, it's continuous, eh. So parang you have to continue every 2 weeks, and then there's no stop. The good thing about the 6 week cycle is that once we finish the one cycle, uh, okay, this is good enough. Okay, we have delivered it, and then uh, after 2 weeks we plan again for the next cycle. So making sure that those deliverables are we have the appetite to do it within the 6 weeks.
Awesome. We linked to Basecamp's shape up framework on the chat. I think that's the 6 cycle framework Kate was
Yeah,
talking about.
correct.
How about you, Gian? What mindsets, frameworks, or what are absolute necessary things you need to do or have to do if you're a product manager?
I think the mindset really is uh, knowing what needs to get done first. I think a lot of what product manager will experience, and it could be your day one or it could be your day 1000, is that because you have the label of product manager, people think they can just dump all of their ideas onto you and think that you can get it done the next day. It's like when your family finds out that you work in IT, and then the next day everybody wants you to reset their passwords, want you to fix their computers. They'll just naturally come in, and I think be able to prioritize and having a framework. And there are several out there. There are really several out there. It'll be a matter of which one flows with you naturally. Um, Being able to understand what you want to do first or what should happen first is a very important mindset to have. Gaith said this earlier, and I think that was a very bold thing to say. Saying no to stakeholders and developers is a very important thing to do. And it's not no, forget about it. It's no, we'll think about that later. We need to do this first because this is very important. Um, I'm curious, and I'll ask Keith this later. That as a developer, does he say no because he knows it can't be done? It's like, no, Mr. Developer, that's not what we're going to do. But yeah, I think that's a very important mindset to have. Tools that are great to have. Um, oh, I don't know if this has been mentioned in other places, but I'm a firm believer in having a really great chat channel goes a long way. Goes a long way to how your teams work. Because if they don't like the chat channel that you're using, they're not going to respond to you. Conversations will get lost. Collaboration just goes away. And you'll be surprised it's not always Microsoft Teams, it's not always Zoom. Sometimes it's Discord, because Discord creates a better mood. Let's just be honest, Discord has one of the best audio streaming quality. It's easy to use. For some reason, it takes lower bandwidth. I don't know how they're doing that. I really don't understand. But yeah, those are great tools. But my go-to tools, aside from having a great chat channel, I'll be honest, guys, just goes back to Excel. On some days, I'm not. I've always been a fan of using new tools. um, Alex is too. We like to try new things and say, "Oh, let's try this new tool again next week. Oh, this is so much better. They have better GIFs, better images. It's easier to use." But I always fall back to Excel because it's reliable. Everybody knows how to use it, and I don't have to teach anyone again on how to use it, because we tend to find really obscure apps. It's one of my faults as well. I like to try new things. And when you try new things, well, you have to teach everybody else because nobody else is probably using that tool too. But yeah, having a great communication channel is great. Having a mindset, knowing what to do first is always important. And yeah, this guys, you gotta have
Best tool.
this is self-care 101. Everybody watching, you want to be a product manager, get yourself a PlayStation 4, 5, 6, 7. That's the only way you keep yourself sane. That's why it's a
True.
it's a P. P is product. But yeah, those are it for me.
All right. I think there's something to be said about, switching costs, especially if you're a bigger organization with regards to tools and stuff, right? But I think Mika has something to say about that. I'm not sure, but feel free to share any of your experiences, Mika.
Yeah, I was actually gonna say like my I as a PM have used many a framework and many a tool. I think maybe the consistent thread is like more of a mindset is like openness to that experimentation, openness to growth and just learning in general. Um, uh, so as a startup founder, for example, we've tried many ways to think about how to explore ideas, and part of the superpower of being a startup versus being in a bigger corporation is the fact that we are able to experiment and like run faster and need to run faster so we can get to that point, right? So I think like for me is always the openness to experiment. Not everything's going to work out, and there are obviously the switching costs for each one, and maybe at the end of it you just fall back to Microsoft Excel, but maybe whether it's tools or like frameworks, or things to try, openness to experiment, and also having that culture of being able to experiment with your team, um, as well as with like experimenting with launching features and products and seeing how that goes. um, for me too is like I I always try to have like a strong sense of learning with my team. So reflections and retros are super, super important for me. And it was interestingly like I did that for every project that I had at LinkedIn. And then the engineers were like, "Oh, you're the only one who does these retros with the engineers." And I was like, "What? So weird." So just a big fan of growth and learning, and doing that in the shortest possible cycles, right? And for everything, there's always something to be learned. So I also do that with my co-founder every week. Every Monday, we like pull up our new Notion. I love Notion. That's another thing, productivity tool. We pull up a new Notion page and then just reflect back on what we did in the last week, and then what are our goals for this week, and then put it in our database of like lessons we want to use over time. So having that like culture of learning as well, I think is really important. Um, and the other maybe more tangibly tools. I already said Notion. Kind of hard in a big company. I tried to use it in LinkedIn, but didn't work out. And now I can in a startup. Love Notion. I think maybe abstracting really good documentation is really good. Really good channels of communication with your team, as mentioned. Um, Really good ways that you can manage those tasks. And it can be like an Excel spreadsheet, it can be like monday.com, it can be Notion, just whatever works well with your team. um, I never subscribed to Jira, but a lot of people like Jira, so if that works for your team, go for it, but I hate it. um, and yeah, like maybe last thing is like building a lot of good communication skills. So if we're moving to a world of remote, writing as a skill is really important. Writing correct emails, as mentioned, and communicating verbally as well, and learning how to do that over Zoom, I guess, is also really important. skills to build over time.
All right, everyone. Notion Nation. Raise your hands. um, okay, so we have a question here from one of our past guests. Hi, Stella. So she asks, as product managers, what are certain practices or protocols your designers can follow to be better members of your team? Kate, why don't you start? Since you were a UX designer before.
Okay, let me read again the question. What are the certain practice or protocols your designers can follow to better members of to be better? As long I think there's no different companies has different policy or like practices as well when it comes to, and especially in terms of like the stage of your product. If you're on the early stage, making sure that the product discovery is really solid and making sure that you have the right tools and right team to, and understanding that you are still on the early stage. These are the crucial parts that the designer might be involved in. And that involves talking to the customers, getting to know your industry, and going out of the building is one of the key crucial part of the um like practices that the designer can or a product manager can require. But then again, apparently uh it's more on your team culture of having uh getting to get your designer involved on the early stage of the product. Because sometimes as a product manager you might have or you might felt that you all have the requirements already and then pass it down to the designers. But sometimes I think also with the developers, not just the designer, you must involve everyone in the early stage of your product, and then so that there's no confusion that or there's no missing link once you delivered your product right there. So, and I think one of the key critical part of when I have a team of designer, so I'm a product manager and a designer, we do the design review every Monday or every week, so that we set a meeting so that we sit down and review everything, all the deliverables there. So that's on my side.
That's super helpful, Gabe. How about you, Gian?
Yeah, I think Kate something said something really powerful there. Um, Designers going out and really talking to the customers really creates a lot of value in what they bring into the conversations. And I say this because um, a lot of product managers like to think that they know or understand the customer, but um, it's really different when you're trying to understand a problem versus finding a solution. Um, and I've been at fault of this many times. Um, I'd like to think that I know the answer on how to solve it and say, no, this is the solution we want to do. We want to create more videos during the chat. We want to be, oh, I want to cast my vision, blah, 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 blah. But a lot of times, I tend to ignore voices from the customer simply because I haven't had a lot of experience talking with them, and it's different from reading the feedback from a sheet or in Google Play and say, "Oh, this is what the customers are saying. Oh, this is what they want to build next." Really taking the time to sit down and talking with their customers opens up what their real problem is, because they'll tell you what they want. They'll say that, oh, I want caliber to be red next week and orange, and I want to be pink, and I want to be able to move things around. But does it really answer the problem that they're looking for? And most of the times the answer is no. And um, with going out and really speaking with their customers as the design team and understanding that problem, that really helps to clarify what the solution should be. And when you bring that voice to the table, that really creates a lot of impact and um, creates a lot of presence for the designers. And I really encourage this with the design team to be able to bring that knowledge with you so that you can create that space and create that value when coming into the table. And I say that because, and I've heard this before. Oh, I don't feel like I should say something because I'm hesitating. I don't feel like I don't have a seat at the table. You know what? There aren't any chairs. If you sit down, you got a seat in the table. Uh, Sometimes you have to make your own space, and I think bringing customer insight there creates a lot of space, a lot of space, and most of the time, what you know from talking to customers, 95% of your team doesn't know about, or they're only read it about in an Excel sheet. So be very vocal, um, speak your mind, bring your customer insights, because I think that's the biggest value the design team brings, aside from, you know, making all the pretty squares and rectangles. And Alex is going to give me a hard time about this, but yeah. Oh, but at the same time, just like Kate said, as product managers, you need to build that culture too. Like, invite them on day one, give them space to talk. But when you know it's your time to talk, you can just bring those insights, and I guarantee you, they'll create a lot of value, not just for yourself, but for your team in general.
Basically be the voice of the users and bring it to your team. How about you, Mika? Thoughts
Yeah.
on practices or protocols for designers they can follow to be better members of your team?
Yeah, I feel like when I read this, I was like, I feel like I should be asking, how can I be a better product manager for you as a designer? Maybe I'll speak from my like to from a designer that I work with, and kind of comparing his growth, and two things that stood out. One is from when we first started working together until like towards the very end. I think what I really appreciated with him was that he took this very strong ownership mentality with certain things. So, for example, he noticed that I was doing a lot of kind of work on the Figma doc that I maybe shouldn't have been doing, but like wanted to thought I was going to be helping him out in the process, and also helping communicate it to other stakeholders through kind of like showing more flow charts and stuff. He saw I was doing that, and he's like, "Cool, I actually can also do this in lieu of Mika to show it to our stakeholders." And he saw that and took ownership of it and was like, "Hey, Mika, look at this. Is this something that you wanted me to do, or like, is this helpful for you as a product manager?" And I was like, "Oh, cool, yeah, that's exactly what I needed." So kind of taking that ownership mentality, seeing what his strengths were as the designer, and kind of having that conversation or having that like ping pong with me, to help empower each other, and like similar things for kind of complementary, doing that. I really appreciated that, and he knew that it was a strength that he had, so he was able to take that on. And then second was oh God, no, okay, wait. The second thing was something. I forgot. Okay, once I remember it, I'll let you know. But the other thing that I wanted to add to that was that I think it's a very different relationship for each designer and product manager and team. So trying to speak from maybe more of my experience to share that like one of the most important relationships that I had as a product manager was with my designer, and so always had like tight feedback cycles with them, and like always tried to figure out how we could grow together. And I think that's going to be the maybe a more generalizable, like fruitful thing I can share is be as close as possible to your product manager, your designer, learn from each other, see how that goes, um, and jointly like be the advocates for the user and the customer. Ideally, you're both in those user research sessions, and also both like instilling that culture of like customer and user perspectives, especially to engineers who are usually heads down, and like cultivate that really strong relationship with each other. I think it can go a long way.
I remember Jen and I doing some user research sessions back at Caliber from what you just said. Like we were both messing around, but yeah, um, going out of the building to just like uh, talking to customers and both being the voice of the user. That's extremely important. We have another question here from Jana Sandico. She says, what are some of the common mistakes you see junior product managers make? Mika, you might want to go again.
Sure. I'll share what I made, or like looking back, learnings that I had. I think starting out as a product manager, it's easy to want to feel a lot of gratification launching something, and putting out a feature, and thinking that like uh, it'll have that sense of fulfillment. It'll have a lot of praise from other people, like external validation around like, cool, you launched something, you shipped something. What I learned, especially at LinkedIn, where it's it's a bit more expensive for the most part to like ship something and launch something. That is not the case. That shouldn't be the case. You're not looking to get any external validation from other people for your pride, for yourself. You're looking to build the best products for your users and your customers. And if it does take time for you to think about that, at the cost of like really digging into the data, really digging into strategy, and like articulating that to other people, it's time worth spending, rather than shipping a really not so great feature with like really bad metrics, etc. That said, like even if you think really hard about a feature and ship still a really bad feature and the metrics aren't that great, that's also not so fun. But at least like you did all of the research and the work to really figure that out and like paint that narrative, instead of like rushing to build something that you knew was already subpar. So not doing your best for the sake of shipping. I think I definitely had that like desire and mindset to just see my thing go live, and wanted to like build the smaller features at the cost of possibly building something like bigger, larger, and like better for my users. Made that not so great trade-off at the beginning.
Okay, thanks for sharing that, Mika. Gian?
Yeah. So shipping products is not the only thing that product managers should be doing. If you're sitting at your desk right now and your team is asking you to look over your product, evaluate it, and see what you can improve or find something that's broken, basically they sent you over to the the bug fixing zone. Um, don't think of it as a bad place. It will be one of the most impactful work that you can do in terms of your product and its life cycle. And I say this because over time I've really been obsessed with, well, with what Mikhail said earlier, right? Yo, I just want to build products, that's all I really want to do. I want something shiny, I want something techy, I want it out there. Um, but over time, you'll you'll understand, or you at least hear it from a lot of customers. They're not always obsessed with something new every quarter or every year or every 2 years. They just want to go into your app and see that it works. I've seen a lot of customer feedback where they don't really do anything on the app. They just browse, and for Caliber, they just look for jobs. They just like replying. They're not really looking to change jobs, but um, a lot of the feedback that they say, "Hey, I just want to use my app and for it to not crash every 5 days, I think would be awesome." Right? So if you're at that place right now and they're not really letting you, or there's really not a lot of space in making new products, you're just there to fix things, that's not always a bad thing. You can make it a great thing because um, your users are there because they already like your app. They're going to stay if it always works. If it doesn't do what it's supposed to do, they're gonna find somebody else. Not because it has better design, it has better value for money. They'll pay anything as long as when they go to the app, it just works. 99% of the time, that's what the users really go for. So if you're if you're working as a product manager and you're a junior and you think, oh, they're not letting me create new things. Really lean into that. Really lean into that product sustainability, product improvement zone that you're in, because that really goes a long way. It's not always about shipping the next shiny thing, but I like shiny things, so I'll give it to good.
Okay. It's not always about shipping the most shiny thing. Great advice.
Not always the video. It's not always the
Um,
video.
and make sure your app is actually functional. um, Kate?
Yeah, sure. Oh my God, I think this question has hit me the hardest because I'm a junior product manager. So I am making a lot of mistakes, to tell you honestly. And if I may share, I think one major mistake that I kept on not really doing, but kept on learning until now is that communication. Um, the first thing that I get into PM role, I didn't understand first what do you mean by communication. It's like, is it like emails or conversation on Slack or chat? Communication is a big responsibility as a PM because you have to align it. So in terms of either documentation or the alignment between the teams and stakeholders, developers that are critical. Because sometimes you might be impacting already the business when you are not responding. Maybe, for example, coming to a weekend and then you have not responded to your boss or to what's the status of this product anymore and leaving them blindsided. So, because we have already paying customers, for example, and then what's the status of the product right now, and especially delivery or the status of your release, and that could bring a lot of business impact. I think that also has a root cause of maybe because you're a junior PM, you might felt into a trap of you felt sometimes that you don't have the individual contribution because but right now as a PM, the stakeholders are now seeing you as a team. You have already now a team of designers, developers, and they are looking at you as a product, not as an individual contributor anymore. Because as an individual contributor, maybe as a designer, okay, good, you design things, you deliver this art design artifacts. As a developer, you deliver and execute those codes. But as a PM, you don't have a individual contribution. You already have this responsibility of making sure as a whole that the product is delivered and making sure that the product is have the product market fit. And yeah, sometimes I felt that I am not doing individual contribution. Like for example, um, maybe writing test cases or maybe have a roadmap. But then again, apparently you are now as a junior PM. That's my like realization until now that summarize all my mistakes. So communications and individual contribution versus as a cooperation as a team.
Got it. Thanks for sharing that with us, Kate. That's really helpful. We have another question here from Lewis, and I think Gian, you should take this one. So he says people are busy with their business as usuals, and adaptation to new tools and processes take a lot of time. What's your tip to product managers who want to stay motivated in innovating processes and frameworks?
No. Um, yeah, I think that's a great question. If you want to, at least this is how I do it. If you want to stay motivated with your goals or to keep doing great things, I like buying stuff. So that's always been a really key motivator for me. And I've seen this meme many times. Um, Malakas ang pagod ko pero mas malakas ang bills ko. So um that sounds like a oversimplification of things, right? But it's I think really it's all about setting your goals and what you want to achieve, which is why having these conversations with your team very early or with your stakeholders is critical to keeping that motivation up. Because the problem with having a north star just as your endpoint is because it's a star. Stars tend to be really, really far away. And it can be really exhausting for teams trying to get to that journey without having a concept of if they don't feel like they're moving anywhere. I would say setting up goals or small wins in between to achieving where you want to get to really helps to continue that motivation. Finding motivation can be difficult, but sustaining it can be done with, I can't believe I'm saying this, process. Um, but these frameworks exist for a reason. The frameworks exist not to hold you back, but for you to be able to use what people have learned in the past because they've already made these mistakes, and maybe you won't make that same mistake again. But I think having really small goals in between to reaching where you want to be or your north star can really help with promoting or continuing that motivation because it gives people a sense of progress. Much like time without a clock, you can't really tell if it's moving. Having something visible for people to reach helps to sustain that motivation and helps you understand, okay, we've done a lot of work. Maybe it's time to take a rest. But creating those goals for you and make it really, I don't know if the word's physical, making it real for them, like just like putting flagpoles. It makes it easier for you and your teams to stay focused because there's a sense of accomplishment. And don't forget to celebrate your small wins.
All right. Okay, Mika, do you want to pitch in?
Yeah, I wanted to add,
Sure.
agree on setting goals and milestones. I think how I read this question is, what's your tip for PMs to want to stay motivated in innovating process and frameworks? I read it as like, how do you keep iterating and innovating in processes and frameworks? And I think the framing is a bit different, or want to frame it in a different way is like, The goal isn't to innovate on processes and frameworks. So I don't think you should try to sustain the motivation to do that. The goal is to solve problems. And if internally you're having a problem with using agile or Notion doesn't work for you or whatever, and see that that's hindering you and your team from making progress towards launching or hitting user goals, hitting business goals, and that's where you step in as a product manager, possibly, or other people stepping in to solve that problem with a new framework or a new process if it's working. The thing you don't want to do is like innovating for the sake of innovating. Actually, it's a shittier process than before, and actually not getting you to your goals for your user or your business. And that's not what you should be trying to do. Innovating for the sake of innovating, but solving a problem in the process.
All right. Kate, you want to add in, or we can go on to the next question?
I would say no to that question. Say
Okay.
no. No, because I don't know.
Already
Already
practicing what he preaches. So learn from that,
That's
everyone.
what
You,
you
you
preach.
can say no. You can say that.
Yes. Okay. Pat from Swarm asks, "What's your best advice for design?" Oh, sorry. We're done. Oh no, we're not done with this yet. What's your best advice for designers who are looking to transition to PM roles, or generally people transitioning from another role to PM? So Mika has been a product designer. Kate has also been, in UX. Gian was a nurse. So
It makes sense. It makes
yeah,
sense.
makes sense. Mika, do you want to start?
Yeah, watch my videos. Joke lang. But in all seriousness, I talk about it in some videos and like some vlogs. And happy to, if you read it, ask me questions and happy to probe even more. But my general piece of advice for people transitioning or like even just like starting their careers in product management and trying to get into it is um, two practical things. One is find a problem in your community somewhere digitally online, and gather your engineering friends or designer friends, paint the vision, and then solve it through tech, and ideally around the space that you want to be in. I think that's the most tangible way to say, hey, I actually went through the process of building a product. I'm actually already doing the job that I should be doing as a product manager. Look at this evidence of it. And that not only gives you the proof of work. Oh, sorry, sounds like crypto. Gives you the proof of work, but also it you actually go through the process of building something and shipping something effectively and trying to solve a problem. And the idea doesn't have to be $1 billion idea. You just have to solve a problem for people, get those testimonials, get that feeling of uh, iteration and feedback, and then communicate that as a story in your interviews. The second thing, which is easier, a little bit easier, but less tangible or less high fidelity, is finding a product or problem and writing about it. So that's actually a lot of what I did when I started out. Is I for a startup or a company that I wanted to work for, I got their product and was like, here are all the ways to improve this product, and here's my spec for it or whatever. Basically like showing them that I could do some of the analysis and the work, and like already giving them tangible suggestions so they could then put it in their feedback in their roadmap, and make it like useful for them. So that's helpful for me as when I started design even, but also helpful for me to get jobs in product management, mostly for startups. Um, and what that does is also forces you to think, at the very least, like think critically about the product that they have, and show some sort of passion or show some sort of enthusiasm for the product that you're critiquing, and go through the flows again of being a product manager, kind of doing the job without the high fidelity shipping part and designing part, but still going through the analysis portion of it, which is really helpful for just product sense.
All right. Proof of work. For all the crypto people out there. But thank you, Mika. That's super helpful. We don't have much time, so we'll get one person to answer the rest of the questions, one person each. So, at this point in your career, do you still experience imposter syndrome? If yes, how do you manage it? And do you have any practical tips? Does anyone want to volunteer taking this question?
I mean, yeah, I can totally Donald Trump this.
See, this is Isa.
Yeah,
Isa. So,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Oh, okay. But um, do I get imposter syndrome? Do I still get it? Yeah, it's called Tuesday. Like just there all the time. It just exists nonstop in the back of my head. But I feel like that exists anywhere. Even I think the best athletes will think about imposter syndrome every now and then. And I don't want to sound cheesy about it, but they say that confidence is the key, and I found that over time confidence isn't really a real thing. You can just say that you're confident. You can just practice how to say things. You can just learn about something before you talk to your stakeholders or your investors. And I think that's the best way that I've been able to manage it, is that if I'm unsure about what I'm doing, the best way to cope up with it is to understand what I'm feeling about it. Okay, why do I feel imposter syndrome? Is it because of particular aspect? And I think when you look into particular aspects, that's what you understand where some of the problems are. It's not as big as a thing as, oh, I don't think I'm doing a good enough job. I don't think I'm communicating well enough. I don't think my drawings are really nice, though my drawings really aren't very nice. Um, but when you get these feelings, I think it's a chance for you to have a moment with yourself. Really, I think imposter syndrome is a great way to communicate with what you're feeling and understanding where these feelings are coming from. So aside from shying away from that, I think people who feel imposter syndrome, or when you're doing your work as product manager, just embrace it and understand where those feelings are coming from. I found that's the best way to deal with it.
They share just like a very tactical thing, very short.
Sure.
So one is like one of ways I battle it is journaling. I just want to write everything out. Second, very practical thing. I have this thing on my Notion called Smile File, where if there's a comment from a friend or a coworker or something that makes my day, that relates back to like my confidence or self-esteem, I take a screenshot, put it in my Smile File, and like put some title, put who said it. And then when I have those moments of imposter syndrome, my Tuesdays, or just like need some encouragement, then I go to my Smile File. I'm like, I'm actually so great. Just as a boost of confidence and also a reminder whenever things get tough.
Okay. We have more questions, and we only have around 10 minutes left, but let's go. So from Addy. Hey, Addy. So he says being indecisive is one of major challenges that I experience as a product owner slash PM, especially having to decide option A slash B slash C with most of the people depending on the chosen direction. How do you ensure that you have a clear headspace when it comes to decision making, or what makes you consider that decision 100%? After, do you ask yourself on the what ifs or take it as it happened already? Kate, I think it's for you because you work out first. before you decide?
Yeah. I think that's the shortest answer from that is that you close your laptops, close your computers, go out and run. Even just for a walk for 10 minutes, because there's a scientific there's a scientific explanation on that, because when your body moves, your mental has a space for to think more or to think. That's why there's a weird example, like when you go for a shower, that's where you find where you find the answers, or while you're cooking or something. So do something else aside from the direct work, and even a 10-minute walk would do, and you go back to where you to you to that kind of like decision that you need to make. Or sometimes if you already are not indecisive, sometimes you just need to decide, and then because being indecisive cause more a lot of, I don't know, pain or in the business being indecisive. So whatever your decision is, because there's a consequence, or there's a trade off, as how I say. So yeah.
Any quick answers from Gian, Mika?
Oh, I can't walk for 10 minutes. I'm just terrified of outdoors. So,
Never mind.
hmm.
uh, Mika?
Yeah, I was actually writing it out in chat, but um, I think it's hard. I think it's like, you're making so many micro decisions as a product manager every single day, and then you have to also make these really big decisions, and it gets very paralyzing. I think over time, as you build confidence for your users and your product and um, your role as a product manager, it gets easier. But also, I think it's a good reminder to know that you shouldn't be at 100% in your decision making. Otherwise, it's way too late, or also it's probably impossible to get 100% clear and sure that this is the right decision. I think what's important is that you de-risk as much as possible. So part of my framework is I write out like, here are all of the risks why this could fail, and then like some level of high, medium, low, is this actually a really risky thing, and then some mitigation of it, so that I can run like smaller experiments, or find some data that says actually it's not that big of a risk, and then that helps me feel more comfortable around making that call or decision. Um, and I think it's also important, uh, maybe more for bigger companies, but making sure that you communicate these risks and making sure that, like, hey, we know all of these things, we know these are all the risks, but actually it's better for our users and our customers that we do this now rather than wait and experiment later on. So this is why we're making this decision. um, in bigger company, you might want to get your manager to cover your ass if it's a very big thing, but making sure that everything's documented, everything's communicated, and in the case that it does fail, which is, for most of experiments probably going to happen, um, that's fine. The thing is, you've done all you could to like de-risk everything. Everything's documented. Now you have lessons learned to then iterate on the next one, and ideally that becomes the success, right?
I think the way we do this is through, I mean, personally, as a Swarm and back at Caliber, was we did some sort of assumption tracker where we have a column for confidence level and like risk level. And if risk level is at a 5, it's potentially dangerous for the business. And then, if confidence is low, then you should focus on that and pair together the highest risk ones and the lowest confidence ones and focus your user research efforts there, and potentially do as much as you can to de-risk any of the assumptions that are critical for your product. Okay, Leroy. Hi, Leroy. He's asking, how are product managers performance assessed? Is it success of product, quality of decision making, quality of features shipped? Anyone can answer. None of the above.
I can go quickly. I actually don't remember the exact words that were used, but it was two main things were like impact, like either business impact, customer user impact, which is always hard to measure because it's like based on how you frame the impact and say that percentage or goal wise. But yeah, there's the customer user impact, and there's also for us like leadership. So how much are you influencing more junior people in your team to become better product managers, or how much are you influencing culture through the things that you're leading um, in the organization, or as a leader in like women in product for me, for example. So there's kind of weight in both. Um, and yeah, I don't recall. We weren't measured in terms of quality of decision making, though. That's an interesting way to measure it too.
Thankfully, I've been measured for quality of decision making. I would like near, near. Um, I found that with different managers, though, that you can have these conversations and set how you're going to be assessed in your performance. And the metrics can vary depending on the organization, but it's really based on that conversation with you and your manager on how success should be. Sometimes there'll be business goals aligned to it, saying that success of a product equals, okay, did you reach X revenue when you have it released? Did you release X number of users come in when you did these features? But I guess it really depends on how you set it up or how you and your manager have that discussion on. But in short, uh, performance assessment can vary depending on where you are and who you're working with. At least that's been from my experience there. I haven't seen like a fixed way of doing it, but quality of decision making just like, oh my god.
And I think there's an interesting point of like setting your expectations with your manager. I think like maybe the joke of it is actually you're assessed based on expectation versus reality, expectation versus reality. Um, but yeah, interestingly too is like within LinkedIn. And I hope I'm not painting a bad picture of LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a great company, just like a big company, right? Is the performance review and assessment cycle is also pretty political in that it's based on the adv- how much your manager is advocating for all the other people that are also up for promotion, which is very interesting. So always important to like get your manager on your side, or like have that conversation earlier rather than later.
All right. I think that's our last question. I have a last question though. What do you want to say to all of the product managers out there? Any closing thoughts or final words? Any advice for aspiring or practicing PMs for our last 2 minutes? Keith, why don't you go first?
Sure. I think when it comes to for transitioning PN, especially or for aspiring PNs, one thing that you could do is really when you look into a career or when you look for a company, being sure you bring value to that company because uh, when you bring that when that mindset with you on the first day, um, and you take care of the work, then the work will take care of you. So you will take a long journey for maybe a senior role or something, but that alone can be your north star as a on your career.
Awesome. Thanks, Keith. Gian?
Well, I'm gonna start working out every day now, thanks to Kaith, and try to make better decisions. But for everyone who wants to try or become a product manager, now is the best time to do it. It's a great space to be in. Everybody is just everywhere trying to make a product. There is a lot of opportunity there. There's a lot of exciting things coming out of technology. I'm still very surprised that every other week there's something new that's coming up. You would think that people would have discovered everything that's left to discover, but it looks like for everything that every other app makes, there's something that you can do even better. And if you're excited about discovering new things, finding solutions, or just talking about problems, maybe not even solving, just talking about a lot of these problems and finding ways to how to solve them, I think product management is a great place to be in. It's very fun, it's very exciting, and I think just go for it.
Okay.
Mika, our final word.
Yeah. Ooh. All right, sure. No, I was actually gonna be a bit more pessimistic, but then optimistic about being a product manager. I think like there is a lot of praise for product managers and even like founders and stuff. But it, it's a very hard job too. It's very challenging. And that's why I guess they're paid the big bucks. Um, can feel lonely sometimes. But I think the flip side of that is there's a reason that it is very challenging, is because at the end of it is also very fulfilling. And if you're starting off your career in product management or transitioning, you're already going to feel the like brunt of the difficulty of being a PM by just like trying to get into product management, because hiring or like it's also a very competitive role to be in. That's like the first hurdle, and the second hurdle is like continuing to be a product manager. I think making sure that as you're going through the process of finding a job in product management, just if you really really want it and know that it is for you, then sticking to it. It'll be difficult, very tumultuous, but um, uh, if you really want it, it's possible no matter what background you have. And I talk about that in my videos, but no matter what background you have, you'll be able to find your way into it. Just stick to it, and can be very fulfilling at the end of the line once you have all that responsibilities. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Kate, Gian, and Mika for swarming with us. um, so if you enjoyed today's event, you can catch our other episodes at swarm.work/talks. We're also going to upload this one there. And please follow us on Twitter. So yeah, thanks everyone. Stay swarming. Bye.